tap your microphone fast for me? Okay. Hello, and welcome to Jason Cavness Experience. I'm your host, Jason Cavness. I'm also CEO founder of Cavness HR. At Cavness HR, we provide HR to companies for foreign and unfair people. The Jason Cavness Experience is sponsored by Silo Labs North America. Silo Labs specializes in delivering Internet of Things, AI, and machine learning to streamline operations and drive innovation. They're able to do this at 70% of development costs and 30% on time with Silo Labs. For more info, email contact@Silo Labs or reach out to me at jason@cavnesshr.com. We're also brought to you by 8-Bit Content, a content marketing agency specializing in boosting awareness and leads for its partners' business. As a listener of the Jason Cavness Experience, you can receive a free site audit to help identify opportunities for growth or improvement. Visit www.8bitcontent.com or email will@8bitcontent.com to get started. I'll have all in the show notes. Our guest today is Michelle Moffitt. Michelle, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Super excited.
Yes. So Michelle, I always try to start off hopefully it's the easy question, right? So talk a little bit about what you do for fun, hobbies, off time, stuff like that.
That's a loaded question over there, Jason. I became an empty nester 2 years ago, and so I'm still trying to figure that out, what I like to do for fun and hobbies. I walk a lot. I just enjoy getting outside, and that's more for mental health than anything. I'm super extroverted, so I love sitting in a coffee shop and being able to get energy from everybody else in the room. So coffee maybe is a hobby. But I think I wrote a book recently, so that just really took up all my time and energy. So like I said, just trying to discover what I actually like to do and what I want to do when I grow up.
So do you have a favorite coffee brand or style or story, anything like that?
I like Zoka by Green Lake. It kind of has a good vibe. There's lots of plants in there and exposed brick and wood and all of that. And most people are there working, and so it's got a good hum.
That's like a neighborhood coffee shop?
Neighborhood coffee shop.
I know, obviously, Seattle's known for Starbucks,
Right.
But, I know most people in Seattle don't really drink Starbucks, It's like bleh, coffee, You drink it, it's convenient, but, if you want really good coffee, there's so many more places you can go to in Seattle or this area,
Yeah, I'm more of a Americano or Clover. I like the taste of the coffee. I don't put all the other
are you drinking coffee or milk and sugar, right?
Right, yeah. Let me get a little bit of a sugar high going here. I don't do that.
People don't realize how good coffee is in other places, right? I just came from Vietnam for a visit, and coffee there is it's like the nectar. It's truly the nectar of the gods, right? It tastes so good, right?
Yeah.
And they'll give you Starbucks, they give you this big cup, right? Over there, you might give you a little bit like this, right? What's this?
It's
and you drink it oh my God,
well, you're even your hand of the little cup.
Yeah, and you're going bonkers,
yeah. And it has so much flavor in it that you don't realize, but
no,
it's very distinct.
So you've been a lifelong coffee drinker?
Lifelong coffee drinker, born and raised in Seattle, so you just have it in your blood when you're
you
here.
Get a blood transfusion or a coffee transfusion, right?
Exactly. Just shoot me up over there. So.
Yeah. So you're born and raised here?
Born and raised here, left to go to college, and then was gone for 30 years and came back a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how it's kind of rare to find somebody born and raised in Seattle, it seems like,
I know.
It's there's so many transplants here.
Us old Seattle people see it through an entirely
grid.
different
All these people coming to ruin my city.
Yeah, and they think differently and they act differently and they do different things. I mean, growing up in the 70s and 80s here, the kind of the vibe was everybody acted like they were middle class, regardless of if they were. If they had money, they still pretended they didn't, and it was very much a small community.
Yeah.
So.
I have friends who original Seattleites. They tell me that back in the day, 70s, you just be somewhere and a rave would pop out anywhere. It'd be you be walking somewhere around the alley, it'd be some kind of private concert going what's going on, right?
Yeah.
They said they missed those days.
Yeah, a lot of music, a lot of just hanging out, good space.
So this might be getting me in trouble, right? But since you've been here all your life. So I got here in the area 2009. I lived down by Fort Lewis, an hour from here, right? And since I've been in 2009, I've heard people say back when Seattle was nice. My question is, when was Seattle nice, right? Because, since I've been here, it's always this stuff going on, right? They're different degrees of not so good, right? Example, my first month there, my aunt and uncle came to visit us, right? And we drove to Pioneer, the Pioneer Park area, Pioneer, what's it called? Pike Place Market?
Pike Place Market, yeah.
And we drove to a parking place. My aunt said, are they doing a drug deal? Yes, they are.
Yes, they are. Seattle's always been a little bit gritty, right? And I think that not gritty I lived in Boston too, and gritty in Boston is Bostonians like to be a little bit dark. They like it to be dirty and dirty cops, dirty all that. But Seattle's been a little bit gritty. And I think when you think about how it was started with loggers and fishermen
and all the other illegal activities going on back then,
right.
and still going on right now.
Right. I think, just the DNA has propelled itself in that way. It's the same thing. I remember being in middle school, and you could go anywhere when you were in middle school and parents weren't watching you, and we'd get on the bus and we went down to Pioneer Square right over here, and my friend and I got sandwiches, and she went in to grab napkins or something, and one of the unhoused people came up and took a bite of her sandwich and didn't like it and put it back.
What? That's insane.
Yeah. So it's always been a little bit like that, and I think growing up, you just kind of learn how to deal with what's going on around you and become city smart.
Yeah, like I'm in downtown Seattle all the time, and there's all this stuff going on. About me personally, I've never seen any like crime myself. I always see like of course you walk around with your head on a swivel, paying attention, right? But I've never actually seen anything happen. Then again, like here in Pioneer Square, like 2 months ago, someone got killed like 2 blocks away. Stuff happens. I just have never personally seen any crime myself.
Yeah.
But obviously it happens.
Well, we were just talking about the graffiti the other day, and there's just so much graffiti. It's so sad. And we were like, we've never, ever seen somebody do that, actually. How do they hang from the buildings, and how do they hang from the
it's like, it's some talent, right? I mean, like, I know people don't like, I kind of like it in a way, some of it, because it is artistic, but I don't know. Some of it's like, okay, what are you doing, guy?
Yeah.
Like, best you go down I-5 and like,
how did they get
obviously you climbed up here and climbed here. And obviously, like, people driving below you at like 2 a.m. while you're doing it, or maybe they didn't see you, right?
Yeah, I don't understand that. I've never seen anybody specifically do that. And, you're just like, I guess it's got to be about 3 a.m. after the bars close and nobody's out on the streets.
Do you remember a couple of years ago, there's this big apartment community in LA that they invest like $100 million in. No one moved in because they closed it down. And then all the artists like covered up graffiti. You remember that?
I don't remember that.
It was actually beautiful, right? It was like artwork, and they were like, and the city would come down, like clean it all up. The very next day, it'd be all back up again,
So they weren't like having them come in to do it on purpose.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
I mean, there are places like in the suburbs where they have just a plain board, and they'll have people. It's free reign for people to come and do graffiti on, and then it's so sad though because somebody will covers yours up with theirs.
I mean, one person artist, somebody else is like trash, so to speak, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. So you have 5 adult kids?
I have 5 adult kids.
What's the youngest one? Age?
20, 23, 25, 27, and 28.
Okay. So how do you deal with that? Because a lot of parents, back in the day, I can't wait for my kids to get out at 18, get the hell out of the house. But in reality, you're like, man, please don't leave, right? Because you miss that stuff, right?
I do miss that. Yeah, I miss the chaos. I don't miss cooking. I'll say that much because my kids were all athletes, and so it was a lot of calories to prepare for. The three boys were football players, and so they were eating between 5,000 and 6,000 calories a day. So it was just a lot of food to prepare. But I do miss the chaos. I miss having people around and the interactions between them that were so funny, and so it's really quiet. Yeah.
Too quiet. So how do you deal with this? Like I think some parents are like kind of happy to have the peace of mind. They live their life. Other parents are like, man, my kid ain't called me 2 hours, right? What's going on, right? My kids don't need me anymore. How you dealing with that?
Yeah, I think that's huge because I feel like I think about my kids all the time. And I know they're not thinking about me because I didn't do that with my parents. And I'm like, oh, think about your mom a little bit, right? But yeah, it is very quiet, and it was very purposeful with them growing up. I still feel like, you're still parenting your adult kids, but it just looks different. You don't need to meet their physical needs anymore. So it's more maybe emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's one for you, and I'll tell you my answer, right? What's your definition of being a good parent, right? I think like back in the day, people were like, about me, I'm like, man, my kids need to make a certain amount of money, be a doctor, lawyer. But now I've kind of I won't say I lowered my standards, maybe change them. Now I'm thinking, okay, you're a successful parent if your kids are adding society, right? Are they paying taxes? Do they have a good paying job? You might have failed as a parent if they're in prison, on welfare all their life, stealing and robbing, taking away. So basically, I think you're a good parent if they're adding society. you might have not done enough good job to kind of taking away society. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would agree with some of that. And I would add, I think that success is also about how much they can give their life away.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of financially successful people, or, they have titles that make them successful, but they're not very good people.
I mean, that's true too. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think one of the things I learned late was, is parenting wasn't just about checking the boxes off. Like, do they know how to cook, and do they know
Yeah.
how to clean a toilet? And like, can they go get their driver's license?
Yeah.
It was really about me learning my kids
Mhm.
and how they were unique and different, and being able to help them grow in that.
Yeah. So I have a son and 2 girls, and they're all grown out the house. And I was a firm believer, if you have a boy or a son, he needs to learn how to cook and do, like, quote unquote, back then, domestic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And if you have daughters, you need to teach them how to fight, right? Defend themselves, right? That's my 2 big things when I was going as a
How
parent.
did you teach your kids? How did you teach your girls to fight?
Just like wrestling with them, like telling them how to do stuff,
Yeah.
like stand up for yourself, be aggressive, that kind of stuff.
Self-defense class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, me being in the Army for 25 years kind of helped out with that.
Yeah, for
Is around that
sure.
culture,
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. I think it's interesting, though, today there's been some movement around, like, helping men become more sensitive, or having the roles not so defined.
Yeah.
So.
That's true. So how do you become a licensed therapist? What is that? You just go online and fill out a form and pay $9.99, or you have to go to actual college, certificate? How's that work?
That'd be interesting if people had a little shingle outside their door saying, I got a $9.99 therapy license. It's usually a graduate degree, and you can study for 2 or 3 years. I interestingly went to a seminary to study, and so they made me go for an extra year to learn all the biblical. I don't know why you would do that as a therapist, but I had to take all these biblical classes along with that. And then you have to do internships, and then you get a certain amount of hours done in your training, and then you can apply for your license and take a big test. So.
And is it like it's like everyone passes a test pretty much, so like some people fail, like?
Yeah. Most people, I can't remember the exact percentage, but most people fail the first time they take
Mhm.
it. And you go to one of these testing centers and take it there. And so lots of people are taking all kinds of different tests, and you lock in on yours. And
Mhm.
it's I'm not supposed to share what actually is on the test.
No.
A lot of hypothetical
Okay.
situations.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just keep going, what's the diagnosis that goes with this, and how would I treat this?
So how does someone pick a therapist? Is like they like you pick it, like you go to a Google therapist and you go through different lines. You like do one-on-one comparisons. Like, what's the best way to pick a therapist?
Yeah, there's a great marketing tool called Psychology Today, and it has a lot of filters on it for if you want a male therapist or a female therapist, or a specific way that you want to do therapy, or if you need a marriage counselor, if you are looking for somebody that deals with a certain age group. And so that brings out a lot of filters. I have generally asked for referrals from friends that I trust. And then, if you're looking for one, I would pick 3 and then interview them and see what kind of fit they are, because it is somebody you're going to need to feel really safe with.
And so therapist, you have like confidentiality with the patients. I don't know, I said that wrote it wrong, but.
Yeah, there's like HIPAA confidentiality with that. And so it's interesting because my clients are not there to know about me. I'm not sharing my story with them. It's just kind of an interesting relationship, because they're there to share what's going on in their life, and I'm there to offer feedback and kind of help them rethink. The best way I have found in therapy is for them to have self-discovery. So I pose questions to help them come up with the answers themselves.
And what determines like a successful therapy session?
When you're moving forward.
Okay.
And
who determines that, you or the patient?
In the first couple sessions, we establish goals, and then we start working from the goals, and then we'll reevaluate as we go along, maybe monthly, to say, where are we hitting on these goals. And so we develop baselines. There's lots of assessments that you can take as well, but I'll offer baselines and going, okay, how is your anxiety level now? It was at a 10. Is it now down to a 6? And what tools are you using to help with your anxiety? And so there's measurements that we can take to say whether it's successful or not. When it's relationships. It's how is that's really, you can really tell where it's going in relationships. Like, is this getting better? Are you feeling better about your spouse or your family member? How are you communicating? How are you dealing with conflict? All those things.
How does it work? Like, suppose you have a patient, right? And they're like, been 3 or 4 or 5 sessions, and the patient seems happy, but in your mind, you're like, okay, I'm not be the best person. I'm not be the best therapist for this job. You say, hey, patient, like, let's find you someone else, or you try to work it out. How does that work?
Oftentimes, you'll get into a space where, well, when I'm ready to graduate them, that's a place where you kind of feel bored in the session. There's not a lot to talk about, but it's also really hard for me and the client because we've developed a really good relationship. When there's maybe some issues that I'm not familiar in dealing with or I'm not specifically trained in, I'll refer them out and just say, it might be a better idea for you to get help in this way with this specific trauma or addiction that I'm not qualified or certified to deal with.
And so it's you and the patient like one-on-one in a room, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do?
I do all mine online.
Oh, it's online. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
this pretend you do it in person, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Suppose you do it in person. What do you do to make sure you protect yourself, right? To make sure your safety is not at risk.
That's a great question. I'm not sure that I've had one client where I've had to fire them and ask them to leave the room. It was a couple, and he was getting very heated and angry, and it was time to go. But I was also in an office building where there were other people around. I think with vetting or what you're looking for in the client relationship, you can kind of feel that out. But also, I try to stay offline. My address isn't given out. My phone number, my personal phone
Probably
number.
a good thing. Yeah. Good. Yeah, that's good on you.
Yeah.
So do you think it's a difference, or is it better or worse, or does it make a difference doing like in-person therapy or on virtual therapy?
Well, everybody went virtual pretty much. There was some people that were still doing in person during the pandemic, and they would wear masks. And so it was kind of this idea of like, do you put a screen between the two of you, or do you cover your mouth? And I just felt like for me, it was difficult for my clients to see, and it was difficult for me to see their expressions when half of their face was covered. And so, but we also know that energy and all of that flows through sound waves and media waves. And so in that space, we can also offer really good therapy. I tell my clients, I can't see your body. And oftentimes that's an indicator of what's going on for you in session. So I need you to be more alert to that so you can tell me, did you just get into a fetal position, or are you curled up, or do we need to do some grounding exercises?
Yeah. And so how long have you been doing therapy?
9 years.
9 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What happens, like, I know you do HIPAA and stuff, but like, suppose someone tells you like, I'm gonna harm myself, I'm gonna harm someone else after this. Are you obligated then to tell law enforcement then, or still HIPAA?
I'm a mandated reporter.
Okay.
And if they're gonna hurt themselves, we develop a safety plan between us, and I have them write down what goes on the safety plan, like other people they're gonna reach out to if it's getting really bad. I have never really had that, but it's time to get them to the hospital. And honestly, that's the kindest thing you can do, just for the listeners out there. If somebody does want to harm themselves or harm someone else, it's time to get them to a hospital, because it's not kind to them or the people they want to harm to allow that to happen. But oftentimes people think that that's not a nice thing, to take you to the hospital and check you in.
Yeah. What do you think about this? I know, I think like, especially in the military, right? The thinking was back in the day, if someone says they want to harm themselves, they really don't. They just want attention.
Mm-hmm.
Other people know that's a cry for help. What's your take on that?
I think you don't play with that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So don't tell the details, and don't answer the question you don't want to. But what's something like really caught you off hand, like emotionally, right? Like kind of like took you off by hand, like you weren't. I'm just saying you weren't prepared for it, but like you're like, whoa, this is like some emotional stuff this guy's going through right now, and it kind of caught you off guard.
Yeah, I think when it hits home that it's something I've also walked through, or I'm walking through, because therapists also have their own stories and places that they've been hurt. We all don't have perfect stories. We all haven't been perfectly attuned to as children. We all have stuff going on in our lives and suffer. And so I think when somebody's story kicks up against mine, that's where I get a little bit dysregulated or shocked that I'm like, oh wait, that's transference. I'm feeling that.
So let's suppose you have a patient, right? And like, suppose you're some random place Suppose you're downtown Seattle, and you're getting a coffee somewhere, and this person walks in. Do you like ignore them or like don't recognize them? How's that work?
Yeah, at the beginning of our time together, always will say we may run into each other at some point, and if I do that, I will not call you out. I won't recognize you.
Okay.
You're welcome to say hi to me, and then I can say hi back, but that's just part of the confidentiality.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some pros and cons of being a therapist?
The pros are having the privilege of walking with people through really hard times and seeing really good growth and healing happen. The cons for me are it's very isolating. You know, my clients, I'm not connecting with them on a relational level. It's a therapeutic level. And so my clients don't know about my life. I don't share that. And then when I leave work, I can't talk about my work. So it's very isolating in that sense.
So how do you keep your business life, the therapy stuff, separate from your personal life? How do you make sure it doesn't bleed over, so to speak?
Really good self-care.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, are you talking about emotionally?
Yeah. Anything you want to talk about?
I think emotionally there, it's
like how do you keep from getting too invested in your clients? Some
of it's personality. So I can be very empathetic, but I can also leave it at the door. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, that's my best way to describe it. Are you familiar with
a little bit? Yeah.
Okay. So I'm an Enneagram 7, which is good and bad for a therapist because I can make quick connections. Like I'll say, you just said this word 3 times in the last 5 minutes. What's going on there? What does that actually mean? And let's draw that back to this other point you talked about. So I'm really good at connecting the crime scene on the wall with the red, string that you've got up there. I can make those connections really quickly. The other thing about Enneagram 7s is we're pain avoiders. And so dealing with someone's pain, I'm oftentimes sunny side up, or I'll say, well, at least, if it rains on a picnic, I'm like, well, at least we're together. And so just having to, for me, have to grow in that space of like, I need to sit with people in their pain and suffering.
Okay.
Which is hard. That's a harder part for me as a therapist.
So this reminds me of a TikTok I seen the other day, right? Totally kind of on subject, right? And so this little girl, maybe 5, 6 years old, and she told her mother, Daddy has told me I'm very pretty. And the dad said, that's not what I said. What did I say? Oh, well, actually, Dad said I'm pretty annoying, but I want to focus on the positive.
I think that's an interesting part because oftentimes we have this like positive, like negative positivity that comes in there of like, well, my life will be better if I just think about positive things. And that's true to some degree, but we also we can't ignore these painful moments, and we can't really feel joy if we don't feel sorrow. Like we're just kind of flatlined.
So the Enneagram, what's the difference between that and the Myers-Briggs test? Are those kind of the same thing, the different things?
Sometimes they're used in the same capacity in the workplace. They're both personality tests and assessments. The Myers-Briggs is a little bit more static, where it's you test and you go, okay, that's who I am. Those are my letters that go with me, and that's how I show up in this space. And the Myers-Briggs was actually put together back in, I want to say the 60s. I could be wrong, but it was primarily to help women get back in the workforce. And so it was an identifier of their personalities and their gift sets to put them in the right places. The Enneagram is much older than that, and it's a tool that we use for growth. And so it's not, I think the Trendiagram has come out more recently, where people take these really short assessments and they say, well, I'm a type 7 and you're stuck with me. And that's really not how it's supposed to be used. It's really a tool for growth. And while a lot of assessments will have very much the strength-based kind of thing, which is really helpful, again, the positive side of it, the Enneagram will also point out places that you need to grow. We might not call those weaknesses, but we'll say
not so strong.
Yeah, not so strong, but we'll say these are places you need to grow, and it offers a really good mirror for reflection of like, well, how do I do that, or how are people receiving me? So it's a really good tool for relationships. For instance, the 7, I'll speak to myself, is the vice is gluttony and the virtue is sobriety, which sounds horrible. It sounds so limiting to a 7, but I will collect things. Like I will collect books, or I'll collect quotes, or I just want more and more and more and more. And a couple summers ago, we were going to the St. Michel Winery to go to one of the concerts, or that it had just come out of it being advertised. And so I told my partner, hey, let's go to some concerts this summer. And he was like, sure. And I was like, I want to go to this one and this one and this one and this one and this one. And he was like, you're being a 7. You're trying to go to a mall. We're just going to start with one. So
Yeah, so I don't think I ever took the Enneagram. I took Myers-Briggs in the Army. So Myers-Briggs, I'm INFJ. Like there's only like 1% of us supposedly. So I'm like an introvert.
so you're the unicorn of
Yeah, supposedly, yeah. I mean, I wish I would have learned a lot early in my life and made my life a whole lot better, you know. Like I tell people, like, example I use, like if I go to a networking event with 50 people, I don't want to talk to anyone, right? I just, let me be in the corner by myself and observe. But if someone said, hey, the MC can't make it because someone's the MC, I'm like, I'll be the MC, right? Which is totally weird, I think, yeah. Do you think one is better than the other, more accurate, or is it just like depends on the situation?
No, I think that we need them all. We need all of the 9 different personality types. Like the perfectionist. I need my CPA to be a perfectionist.
Hopefully, right?
I need my oral surgeon to be a perfectionist. But it's the like how you're growing or how you're aligning in that space or integrating yourself into becoming the best version of who you are. So if you're a perfectionist, you're just constantly striving to reach some bar you can never reach. And so learning that about yourself and saying, I'm not going to ever reach that bar. How do I be kinder to myself in this space is part of the Enneagram Type 1's growth.
So this is going to be kind of negative, right? Have you ever thought like whatever you know, like you're on a plane, a bus, getting dental, whatever. Have you thought to yourself, man, I wonder if this guy was the last person in his class, right? Like if he graduated last, right?
Like the expert that's like at the bottom of the rung.
Yeah. I graduated with a C plus, 72, average, and I'm flying this plane, right?
Yeah.
Because someone has to be the last person to graduate, the last person in class, right?
I've never thought about that, and now I'm going to be a little bit. Thank you, Jason.
Yes. What is anxiety?
What is anxiety?
Yeah.
Anxiety is a fear-based emotion. It shows up in your body in different ways, and when you start naming it, you can call it.
Is it like mental or physical or combination of both?
I think it's both.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can feel anxiety first before you can actually think about it. So I usually feel it in my chest. My chest gets tight. My heart starts to race. I might feel it in my throat a little bit too. Some people, feel it in their gut and have gut issues through anxiety. It also is kind of that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You can step into that with it as well of like, but a lot of times it makes you freeze, right? Because it becomes a fear about the future. Like what if? And I think a lot of times working with belief systems and trying to work out of anxiety, well, what if that's not true? What if there's a really good possibility here? But our design as people is created to survive and designed for safety. And so we'll often step into these places of how do I protect myself from the worst case scenario? And so we want to kind of reimagine that and go, well, what if something else happened that's really good? And sending them into a different kind of brain space.
And do people get medicine for this, or is it something you have to overcome yourself with help with a therapist, or like how do people overcome this?
All of the above. Yeah, there's a lot of good medicine out there for anxiety. What I would generally say is when I'm seeing a client, we try to develop some tools around anxiety first and how to do deep breathing, or how, like if there has some social phobia, how to think ahead to go, where am I going to park my car? Where am I going to, and creating a narrative for them on that side. And then if we're still finding higher levels of anxiety that they're just not functioning well and distressed, I'll send them to their PCP or a psychiatrist to get some medication.
So how do you get diagnosed? Is it like, does a person say I have anxiety and they go with it? Or is it like some kind of test, physical test, blood test you can take to like actually determine?
That would be interesting if there was a blood test. I'm not sure if there is, okay. But I think generally people feel distressed and they feel like incapable of really living their lives. They feel really stuck. And same with depression, except depression's on the other side of it. So, it'll keep you from doing what you really want to do. And I've got anxiety and I can't get out of this, and my mind keeps looping on all these terrible things I think are going to happen. And so being able to kind of kick out of that, the medication will help lower that. I call anxiety kind of inflammation. So it's like if you had inflammation in a joint, you would take ibuprofen to kind of ice to get the inflammation out. So sometimes SSRIs are a really good way to lower the inflammation, and so you can actually use the tools, and then sometimes people can get off the medication using the tools.
So what's your take on this, right? So I know, of course, like I think every generation being a time, the generation before them messed everything up. The generation after them is like lazy as whatever, you know. But like I give Generation Z and A, whatever they are, like the mental health days. I'm believing in mental health days, right? I think that's a good thing you did. However, you can't take a mental health day every day, right?
No.
I mean, like there's some goodness like building up resiliency,
Right.
like struggling with a struggle, right? So how do you recommend people take a balance between like taking care of mental health and okay, I need to quote unquote suck it up and like figure this out on my own?
I don't find a lot of people that are wanting to take mental health days all the time. There's something innate in us that wants to have purpose and meaning, and so, you know, I 100% agree with you that there's this place of building resiliency when we come against something tough that is also part of who we are. But I would say, you know, self-care is a part-time job, and self-care not going, I'm going to go get a manicure and a pedicure. Self-care meaning I'm going to stop. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to sit down and actually enjoy my food that's in front of me and taste it rather than just, I'm a container eater. I will admit to that. Like I'll go get the cottage cheese out of the fridge and take a couple bites and, you know, call that good. But just actually sitting down with my cottage cheese on a plate might be a better idea for me.
And then next, what's religious trauma? What's that about?
What's the relationship with trauma?
Yeah, what's religious trauma?
Religious trauma. So we have these high control organizations that give you messages about who you are and who you're expected to be, and so the way that you end up getting kind of wired in your brain as a result of that makes you be really fearful. So I just was reading a story on Substack. A friend of mine wrote about being 5 years old and in a Sunday school classroom, and the teacher separated the class to two different walls and told these kids on this side, on the right side, that they were going to heaven, and told the kids on the left side they were going to hell, and then described what that was like. So that would be a beautiful example of religious trauma. And so these little kids are being indoctrinated with that. And so I would call it, there's some incidences like that where it's a story that creates like PTSD, where you're back in it. A lot of religious trauma is what we would call complex PTSD, where it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. So it's just constant like breaking away. Another example, I was recently at listening to a pastor talk unwillingly, and my spirit was not happy with it. But the first part of his sermon was about those people outside. So you really create this fear about everybody that's on the outside. And then, and so you're like, okay, only the people inside the bubble are good, and we have to do everything inside the bubble. Everybody outside is bad. And then the last part of the sermon was, and you're bad too. Mm-hmm. You're a sinner, and you have a black heart, and there's no hope for you apart from you saying this little prayer. And so it's just all fear-based. And then you're functioning in the world watchful all the time. And so I have massive religious trauma. And there's places where you're just constantly like, is it okay for me to show up in the world like this? Am I doing something wrong? Is God going to be displeased with me? So you have this God card on top that they use as a power play.
Yeah, it always amazes me like how religious people, they always go to the New Testament, but they ignore the Old Testament, right? It's like two different gods. The Old Testament God, like he's killing people, having the Israelites like kill and murder people, right? See, I don't know, right? I know, like I can't remember. It's like one religious. I don't know if it's Methodist or Puritans or no one religious. Like growing up, it was like okay, everything's predetermined, right? Mm. And what you do, it's already determined. Predetermined you're going to heaven and hell. I was like, well, if it's predetermined, I'm going to hell. Why am I going to be in church for?
Right.
And then if I'm going to heaven, why be in church? I do all the bad stuff, you know?
Right. I think it's interesting, like how it just gets morphed into some way for power and control. And I remember I grew up in a really progressive family, and God was super loving and kind. And somewhere I fell away from that teaching, and it became something that was, God was to be feared, and I needed to make myself small, and I was always afraid. And And there was a time where I was like, God needs to break me.
Mhm.
And then I would later say, and he used my husband to do that. So and that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that good that I was broken by God and my husband? So, but I do remember talking to some people about what it meant to be a Christian, and they were, from some particular sects, and they said, well, you need to say this prayer, and then you need to behave like this. You change all your behaviors. And I was in college, and I liked to party, and I thought, well, that doesn't sound very fun. So you're telling me that this prayer is actually what determines whether I'm in or out. And they said yes. And I said, so if I wait till I'm 80 to say the prayer, I'm still in.
Yeah.
And so I can still party and have a good time until I'm 80.
I gotta have a perfect timing. Okay, I'm done in 5 minutes.
I'm done. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that always got me, like with the Bible, is like, how come God always spoke to some random person, right? It's like some shepherd person. Like, it's never like, I'm God, I'm gonna speak to all the leaders at one time, right? It's always some random, like Aaron or Moses or Isaiah, some random shepherd person, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. And, I think looking back at it through a different lens, these desert fathers or John that wrote the book of Revelation, I think they were all on psychedelics.
I mean, that's a theory a lot of people have, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big theory out there that Moses was a psychedelic with a burning bush, Yeah. I mean, it's out there, right?
Yeah. I never thought about that one. That's true.
It's just amazing, right? I mean, like, I believe there's a God, I believe there's someone out there, right? But it's like this benevolent God take care of us, I don't know, right? Then again, I refuse to believe that two random atoms came together and the Big Bang did everything together, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe that either, so I don't know what I believe.
But I think there's room for that. There's room for mystery, and there's room to say, I don't know, I don't have it figured out. But I think within high control religious groups, they have all the answers. I call them communities of certainty.
So here's my theory, right? I have no way to prove this, right? So you know how like there's like ants and bees and stuff like that. I mean, they're talented to have life. They're like living their thing.
Yeah.
And we're way above them. We're paying no attention, right?
Yeah.
I think there's something above us. Like we're bees and ants are somewhere way above us, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Is my theory, right?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, and I used to not believe that there was extra things, extraterrestrial or anything out there, but I'm like, well, why would we be so great? We're the only ones here.
Yeah.
And
what's out there we can't see? Like example, like remember when the northern lights came down all the way down here, we see it. Like what else can we not see, right?
Yeah. We're just limited.
Yeah, or our perception or the bandwidth or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of being able to lean into mystery and not knowing. Because I'm like, I don't know. That's okay. You can be on your journey and believe that. And
I mean, think about what's scarier, right? The fact that there's aliens out there or there's no aliens, right? Both are kind of scary, right? Like, man, we're the only ones here. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that is pretty scary.
And another thing, too, like a lot of people like will say, man, I want aliens to come. You really want aliens to come here? Are you sure? Remember back in like the 1500s when the Spaniards went to Peru, the Inca Empire, and destroyed it?
Yeah.
Because the Incas, their Bible, it said that God would go in here, going to come on ships.
Yeah.
And they came and destroyed everyone. Yeah. What if some alien ships came and said, I'm your God from Abraham, blah, 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 right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't want aliens to come. Me personally, no.
Did you ever watch The Twilight Zone?
Yeah.
There was one episode, I can't remember what the name of the aliens were, and they came here and they had their own words, like their own dictionary and language and stuff. And so they were wanted to take humans back to their planet with them. And so they were translating the little guide or whatever it was, and it said how to serve man. And so everybody was signing up their suitcases, all their belongings to go to this new planet to how to serve men. And this person comes up at the end that was studying and said, stop, don't get on. It's a recipe book.
Oh, shit.
I always think of that as like, okay, understand, like get the translation right.
Yeah. So, yeah. But who knows, right? I mean, who knows, right?
Who knows?
Yeah. So how did you overcome your religious trauma? Are you still working on it?
I would say I'm still working on it. It was a lot of being able to tell my story. Writing my book was a big part of that. So the book is, part memoir and then part psychology of how do I find myself in that space? What are our brains actually doing? And how do we rewire, those places for ourselves? I think recognizing that I was experiencing religious trauma, that I was in a very oppressive system was the first part, and being able to get my voice back and decide um, that I wanted to change my mind, right? The first thing I changed my mind about was that I could change my mind. Like, I don't have to have this belief system anymore. I don't have to obey these elders. I don't have to do what they're telling me to do. I can say no.
Isn't it amazing like how we keep those beliefs even though they're not there anymore? Like example, I thought, and this popped in my head, there's some TV show where this young girl asked her mother like, "Why do we always like cook?" So it was like they would cook like a rump roast, right? They would like pretty much cut a third off, put in the pan, right? And like, why do we cut a third off to put in the pan, right? Oh, we just always done that way, right?
Yeah.
Ask your grandmother, and then they got their great grandmother, and they're like, "Oh, we do this because back in the day the pan didn't fit the meat, so we just can't cover. The pan's big enough now,
Yeah.
put the whole meat in there now, right?
Yeah.
But you get stuck in your ways, I think, right, and don't want to
Yeah.
change, if you're limiting beliefs.
Well, and again, it's a safety mechanism for us, and we have this kind of super highway in our brains, and we're looking for belonging. And so for me, the system I was a part of, I'd been a part of it for 25 years, and that's where I belonged, right? And if you don't belong, you're not going to survive, is what the super highway in our brain tells us. And so I was like, if I leave, I don't have anybody. I don't have anything. And, I didn't. And literally I had to start over and find new people and find new places to belong. But I would do it again in a heartbeat to get out of a place that was indoctrinating.
So your book cracked open. This is your first book.
It's my first book.
So what made you decide to write a book?
And honestly, Jason, it was never on my bucket list. When I was getting out of this system, I moved back to Seattle, which was home, and one of my friends was listening to my story, and she said, "You need to write this out." And I thought, I don't really want to sit in my pain, type 7 Enneagram over here. I was like, I don't want any more pain. And I started thinking more and more about it and thought, well, I want to share with people that they have the ability to change their mind. And there was this moment in the beginning of my book I'm writing about, and I'm sitting in a room with 8 men because we were in a complementarian system, which means men and women have distinct roles and women can't lead. And so here's these 8 male leaders in the church, and one woman was there to support me. And they had asked me what was going on in my life because my marriage was really bad. And my husband was also a church leader. And I look up expecting help because he had a lot of issues. And they say, "We don't believe you. You need to repent." And so at this point, I was like, wow, I don't really lie. Lie is not part of my life. I don't make up stuff. And then I was so mad, it was really the catalyst. And so I remember walking in South Boston, and, it was my therapy. And I said, okay, God, fine. How do I need to repent? And repentance was, you're going the wrong way. Now go the right way. And I was like, how am I going the wrong way asking for help? I need help with the situation at home. And whether it was an audible voice or not, I heard this God say, you care more about the opinions of man than you care about mine. And so I was like, okay, I'm not going to care about these men's opinions. And, they are creating a narrative about me that's not true, and really having to walk away in that space. And so the book for me was really a way of helping people get out of spaces like that, helping them change their belief systems, challenging, like, do you only put a third of the rump roast in the pan? How do I change that belief system into something that's more beneficial and aligned with who I truly am?
So I'm going to go back to the book in a minute. But first, so if I heard you right, you said it when you were at the church, they didn't really let women be leaders, right? Mm-hmm. So how did you learn to become a leader?
I think there's a lot of women who are leaders in that space. They don't have the title, and they have to kind of do it underhandedly. So even if I was leading a women's group, I still had to get the approval of the male leadership about what I would be teaching. More recently, I'm leading a retreat, and I went to a male leader in that space and said, do you need to hear what I'm teaching on? And he said, okay. And I said, okay, so do you, like, this is what I'm doing, is that okay? And he said, sure. And I said, well, you're like the leader. These are your people. What if I'm swaying them in a bad direction? And And he was like, huh. I said, what if I'm heretical or blasphemous? And he's like, those are big words. and and he said, look, I think the ladies are smart enough and they can figure out for themselves whether they want to listen to you or not. And that blew me away. Like, those women are smart enough. Oh, right, they are. Right? They're not just going to go along with what anybody says. They can figure it out on their own.
So what does the title Crack Open mean? Any significance of that? Is it like crack open your skull and get all the old learnings out of there and become a new person?
Yeah, really. Like the original title I wanted to go with was I Changed My Mind, My Journey with Repentance. And my editor said if we put repentance on there, we'll get the wrong reader group and they'll leave bad reviews. So Cracked Open was really about, it takes pressure. You know, cracking is like pressure points. And so that was really what happened is I had a lot of pressure and I cracked open, and something where underneath there was brilliance and beauty that came out of it.
So talk about the process of writing the book, right? Was it harder than you thought, easier than you thought, longer?
Have you written a book?
No.
Not yet?
No.
Yeah, it was, I did not know what I was getting myself into. And I wrote through this really amazing group called Manuscripts, and they publish it, but you own the rights to your book. And they, everything is set up. You have different editors and a marketing person who helps you do your marketing. They don't do your marketing for you. And you run a pre-sale campaign. It's a lot. And I think in collage. And so it was really necessary for me to have somebody have a very linear process for how it works, but they help develop the book. They help do all the revisions. And it was done in a year.
Okay.
And so it was really a full-time job.
And do you like every day you blocked out 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, or how did that work?
Okay, I'm not that structured.
Okay. Or you just like woke up?
I'm like, okay, got to get busy today.
Okay.
You know, I work best under pressure, and but you know, you'd meet with your editor every week, so you had to have a certain word count done at the end of the week. And
you write a book, are you actually like typing it up? You're writing it in pencil or pen? Like, how does that work?
It's different, my process.
Okay.
I think I had a lot of it already done, so I had a lot of journal entries, and it's a lot of stories from my life, and then a lot of theories psychologically that go along with that kind of story. And so I would have, at one point I had like the whole room was full of piles with sticky notes attached to them, and I'd rearrange them and figure out what went where.
And so when you're writing, you just write like typing stuff up, and you, hey editor, the grammar's all jacked up, everything's jacked up, spelling's wrong, you fix it, right? Or do you like you stop, okay, let me make this some kind of at least readable for my editor to go through?
Yeah, at some point they're like, just get the words on a page. And at one of the weeks I was ranting in my book. I was just mad at everybody that was involved in this story. And I told him, I said, hey, I think you're going to cut all this. So he did. He cut like 3,000 words, which felt painful, but also necessary. And so that wasn't, I didn't need to rant for myself. I needed to write the book for my reader. And so I'm having, you know, and when you're writing on your documents, you can see what's misspelled and all of that. So they're going to come back and help maybe with word structure, or I had to get research. And so I would interview, or I would listen to podcasts or read books that would go along with, you know, from experts in the field that I was studying. And then I had other people add their stories to it as well.
But you actually wrote the book yourself, right? You didn't have a ghostwriter or nothing like that, right?
No ghostwriter. Yeah,
So,
I think that's kind of cheap.
you probably remember this, but you know who Charles Barkley is, right?
Yeah.
The basketball player. Way back in the day, he wrote like an autobiography, right? And someone started criticizing him for something, right? Like, what are you talking about? Dude, this is in your book. That's not in my book. Yeah, dude. And it ended up that he had a ghostwriter write for him, right?
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that because they were saying, you know, a lot of people who have a ghostwriter are getting stages, right? They're up front getting to speak and having, you know, a platform like that, but they didn't go through all the hard work of actually writing the book.
Yeah.
And it is a really hard process.
And the book was just released, correct?
January, yeah.
Okay.
End of January.
And how do you determine the book's going to be success? Like number of sales, number of people that reach out to you? Like, what's your success
I think
metric?
it's different. So I'm not writing through a big 5 company, editorial company, publishing company. And so I had a friend that was writing a book around the same time, and he said he wants to have fun, he wants to break even, and you know, I want to help people, and so kind of looking at it that way. I would love to make a lot of money, but most people don't make a lot of money on their books. You get more work out of it than anything.
So the book's gonna be like a lead magnet as far as like getting more clients and maybe speaking engagements, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
So you started on part 2 already?
No, I think the thing I need to get together right now is just kind of a workbook to go along with it to offer to book clubs and stuff to have questions.
So for people out there thinking about writing a book, can you quickly give us some lessons learned, mistakes you made so they won't make them?
Yeah, interestingly, if you're writing memoir, I would absolutely recommend getting a coach or a therapist to walk you through that, because you get re-triggered writing the story. And so that would be something I would definitely recommend anybody that's writing memoir. There's a lot of excellent editors out there, a lot of people who help authors write their books, like author coaches. And so that's really helpful, because I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I don't know that a lot of people have an idea of what actually goes into writing a book and how to create story arcs and how to like how long does it need to be, and how do you do a cover design? How do you put your book on Amazon? All those things. And so writing with a company or an individual who specializes in that is really great. But the best writing I did was at the end of my book. And obviously it had a lot of practice over the course of the year to write. And so just, if you're wanting to write, just write every day, because your writing gets better the more you write.
So if you're a book, from like what age to what age does the book cover of your life?
It covers the beginning of my life.
Okay, like 5 years, 7 years?
I'm like a 9-month-old.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when we talk about story, for me specifically, I was trying to figure out how I got into this high control religious group, because that wasn't at all what I grew up with. And so as a narrative therapist, I also know that our early stories inform how we turn out in the world. And so my early memory or a story that I had been told was that I was in a playpen a lot. And my mom was on bed rest because she was pregnant with twins, and it was a high risk pregnancy. And so I couldn't see my mom. She could hear me, but we didn't have that attachment from being close. And so that was the very first part of my story, of like how that part was missing.
And then how old does the book go to? Like 9 months to like?
Till the last, probably 8 years ago.
So obviously,
I won't tell you how old I am.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously that's a big time span, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, how do you determine, okay, like all of us have memories pop up all the time. Like we don't remember, like, like right now, the memory popped up in my mind while I'm playing yo-yo at 6 years old, right?
Okay.
And like, how do you go the process? Okay, this is a book, this is not a book, like this is make more impact, this not impact, like, I mean, it had to be kind of, I would think it'd be hard, like decide what to leave out. You can't put everything there, obviously, right?
Right. And I think as I developed the chapters and kind of the way that it was formulated with my editor, there were stories that we cut and stories that we kept that just had more impact, I think, for the way that we wanted the book to go. So there was like there was a story around me driving my kids to the library. And like, I don't know why that was in there. I don't know why that came up, but somehow where my brain was organized, that was an important story to tell.
And was the book like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or is it like more like 1, 7, 4, 3?
And again, like that's how my brain works.
That's how my brain works too. Yeah, my brain works like that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I think that's what makes memoir versus like an autobiography.
Yeah. Has writing the book made you a better person, you think?
That's loaded. Has it made me a better person? It's made me a stronger person for sure. It's made me use my voice to help others where I might have been more afraid to do that before, or unwilling because I was trained to be complicit in a system, and understanding that I needed to use my own voice to get out, and wanting other people to use their voice to advocate for others. So,
how did you come up with the book titles?
I had again, this is just my process. I had a huge eraser board on my wall, and if a thought came to my mind or a word came to my mind, I'd throw it up there and talk through it with my editor. And there's also a lot about marketing right now. And so what are like buzzwords that are out there? So during the pandemic, one of the buzzwords was burnout. So he was like, we're not using burnout in the title. A lot of people wrote on burnout. And so, what do we want to look at for transformation? Do we want to use the word transformation? So it was just a huge eraser board, and I'd go, I don't like that word. I don't like how that rolls off my tongue, so I'll take it off. So it was, the word resilient is is a buzzword, and so that's in the title of my book.
Okay. Do you also do an audiobook?
Don't have one yet.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ball
No
game.
ball game, yeah. And how long is the book?
It's 260 pages.
Okay.
And so again, in the program I wrote with,
So it's like with 10 font or like 20 font? That makes a big difference. How big's a font?
No, it's small. Like this is the 7, the glutton in me. Like I'm gonna max it out. So
Okay.
I get 260 pages. I'm taking them all.
Okay.
Right. And that includes like your notes and citations and stuff.
So how does like the money work, right? Does like your editors get a certain percent of the sales? You had to pay them up front? Like how does all that money stuff work?
The organization that I wrote through, we pay up front for the group. And so I'm assigned different editors and a teacher for the cohort, and a coach that helps me just kind of think through the intro, and then a marketing person. And so that was $10,000 to
Up front
to have that. And then for the pre-sale campaign, you are, like you would sell a package. Like somebody would buy into my pre-sale campaign and they would get a signed copy of my book plus an invitation to this and access to me on this platform, and independent, or they might get me to do a workshop for them for their group or whatever it looked like.
So obviously different ways to do this, right? How did you determine like this was the best way for you versus like one of the published houses or Amazon? Like, how did you determine like this was the way to go?
Yeah, the publishing houses, you have to have your idea and manuscript pretty much put together, and I didn't. I had a kind of idea what I wanted to do, and they bid, or you get a bid or not. And so this way it ensured that I was going to get my book written, it would get published, it'd be out there. And I'm not a writer, and so I don't know anybody in that community when I was starting, and so it was that would have been a no-go for me for sure. For me personally, I really enjoyed having the group aspect of it. Like we'd have a cohort that would meet online every week, and we would discuss like different writing tools to use. And so that was helpful to have other people that were in that space writing at the same time.
And so I can't think of the word, but like different books go into different categories, right? What category is your book?
Yeah, you have to figure all those things out as well. So mine's in self-help abuse.
Okay.
It's in religious cults.
Okay.
Socio-psychology, or like social issues, I think is one of them.
Are you doing a book tour across the nation?
I would like to. Yeah, like I'm connecting with a lot of indie bookstores in different cities, and hopefully headed in there. The way that I would prefer that my book get out there is in small groups, and more intimate settings, so like fireside chats and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is like do you need to have a goal, like get certain number of sales by this date, or anything like that?
That's been a thing, yeah. But I think it's really hard having to do all the promotion myself. I just feel very full.
Yeah.
And so as I get more events set up, and it can increase sales. Like
so, how are you promoting it? I saw yourself on LinkedIn. Like, what else are you doing to
LinkedIn,
promote it?
Instagram. I have a newsletter I send out.
Okay. I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just I was in Chicago 2 weekends ago, and I felt like an encyclopedia salesman. So I went to indie bookstores, and they're like, you can buy my book online at indie bookstores, but they don't carry it in the store. So it was just getting a face presence with them and saying, and so one of them, Barbara's Books, they I said, hey, this is my book. She's like, I see it online. Okay, I just ordered 2 copies for the store. So, and they put it in their psychology section.
Okay.
So that there's a lot of just old timey pound in the pavement stuff. Yeah.
So what is storytelling? And can someone get better at storytelling?
I thought you meant like storytelling, like you're not telling the truth.
No.
Yeah, you can get better at storytelling. My dad is.
And if we say that is like, what's I'm looking for? Like, not fabricating lies, but like exaggerating. Is that part of storytelling?
Maybe if that's your bent, right? But I really think there's a certification class I took for therapy at the Allender Center, which is local to Seattle. And they do narrative focused trauma therapy. And what you want to do is go back into these snips of time in your life where maybe a traumatic incident happened. And you want to make it very granular, they call it. So, if I was saying, oh, I went up into your office and we spoke, it's very white. very whitewashed, but I could describe the room and say this is how the lighting was, and there's this amazing exposed brick wall over here, and as I'm walking up the stairs, the restaurant, I could smell the bacon cooking from the restaurant. And so when you're telling story, you want to get your reader into it. You want
all the details and stuff. Yeah,
all the details of it. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, the food, walking up the stairs. Yeah, that's very detailed. Yeah, I know I couldn't be a storyteller. How many cups of coffee you drink a day?
I drink 1 cup of coffee, and then I also have like a reishi mushroom coffee drink.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a mushroom coffee before.
It doesn't taste very good.
It doesn't? So why do you drink it then? Just health reasons?
Because I think it's like helps with clarity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it doesn't give me that. It's not acidic like coffee is.
Yeah.
How about you?
Usually 1 or 2. But I try my best not to drink coffee after 2 p.m.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm not sleeping.
What are some tricks or tips you use on yourself to make sure you focus better?
Yeah, again, you're hitting all the really hard questions. Again, because I am kind of like that squirrel person.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work for me to organize my time.
Yeah, I definitely follow the shiny object syndrome all the time.
Absolutely, and down the rabbit trail. And so I think now what I've learned is I'll have one big project I have to get done in a week, and then all the other stuff I'm kind of used to. So if I'm like having to do social media, I'll pack that into a half a day and get everything lined up to post. Newsletter, those are kind of routine things, but the big project, because I'll tend to write down 12 big projects, and then at the end of the week, I'm frantic and anxious because I haven't gotten any of them done.
And you doing this all by yourself? You have like some kind of assistant helping you?
No, it's all me right now.
All you are the assistant?
I am the assistant. I am the coffee maker and the
So talk about some of your travel adventures.
Travel adventures. Well, most recently, most of my travel was going down to Palo Alto to watch my son play football. So
who does he play for?
He just finished at Stanford.
Okay, nice.
And he's training right now for the
draft.
Yeah.
What is his chances? He has a pretty good chance.
I think so. His stock is third day.
Okay.
So and he's an offensive lineman, and they said this is a good year for offensive linemen in the draft. So
does he have a team he wants to go to, or he just wants to get drafted and have a chance?
I think he just wants to get drafted.
Okay.
Yeah, we would prefer the Seahawks, so he would be local. But
are you a big Seahawks fan?
Well, I grew up here, so that was kind of a thing. I'm more of a college football fan.
Yeah. I'm a big Cowboys fan, but I'm more college football,
Yeah, and then we lived in Boston for 10 years, and so we get to say we're Patriots fans.
Okay.
We're not like, we choose them because they're the best, but we actually were.
Yeah, y'all had a good run.
Yeah, we did.
The Seahawks, they got rid of the receivers, had a new quarterback. It's been interesting for the Seahawks this year.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I like watching the game. I don't like watching it when my son is playing, honestly.
I get that.
It's very violent.
I get that, yeah.
And so, I'm always just I lose the ball because I'm just watching how he's doing.
Yeah. Man, I bet you had a good experience at Stanford. Being after Stanford, I mean, you can't be no dummy getting to Stanford, so she has a very good education.
Yeah. They had a lot of transitions in the time he was there. I mean, he started during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And they lost David Shaw, which was heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And so my son had a new coach.
I forgot about that. Did he get fired or he resigned?
He resigned.
Did okay.
Yeah.
He was a damn good coach. I don't know. Do you remember why he resigned?
Well, I think there was just so much going on. So he walked through the pandemic with the athletes, and then all the NIL transfer portal started, and he's classy.
Yeah, I forgot about him. I thought he was still the coach. To be honest with you, right?
Yeah. So he's a very classy man, and I just think that was just a lot to have to kind of for him to switch. I mean, he'll have to answer that himself, but he resigned, and that was a big loss. Any
other travel? You've been to any other countries recently?
Not for a while. Okay. I mean, I've a couple summers ago went to Prague and Berlin and Paris, and that was lovely. Had family in Prague and friends in Berlin, and so that was I like traveling like that when you know people locally, and they can. That's the way to do it. Yeah. Yeah. Get the real Berlin versus like tourist Berlin. Yeah, and then Paris was definitely tourist, and so it was a little bit of a different experience. Yeah. So, what's the difference between being authentic and being too authentic? Great question. I just wrote something about this. Did you see that? Yes, you did. Yes, I did. Are you cheating on that space? Sort of, kind of. So a lot of times we'll hear like you need to be authentic, and that is because that's being a truth teller or letting your whole self out. And being authentic doesn't mean you have to share every little detail of your life with somebody. If you share part of your life with somebody, you're still being authentic. You're still giving information about who you are, but it's not damaging to you. Or a lot of times you might feel emotionally violated that you just shared your whole life with somebody you don't even know, in the idea that, oh, I was just being authentic. And so allowing yourself to kind of give a percent of yourself away doesn't mean you're inauthentic. That still is true to who you are, but you're just not oversharing.
And like, how do you know who to trust to be authentic with, and how do you set up the right boundaries for people?
I mean, slow down, like slow the frick down in relationships, right? So there's no need to hurry up in those places, and let yourself trust how that process is going. Trust the person sitting across from you and saying, do I want to share this information?
So you're saying this on the first date? Don't share you just left a toxic relationship on the first date?
Maybe not. Maybe just enjoy the food and talk about the food and the weather. Something pretty light.
Cause like you can't be authentic with everyone, right?
No.
Because won't some people take advantage of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think you put yourself in this place where you feel emotionally violated by sharing so much with somebody that you don't even know.
So next, how do you this might not be the right term, but like, how do you overcome being in a narcissistic relationship or being around narcissistic people?
It's a lot of work. Cause
usually those people don't know they're narcissistic, right?
No. Yeah. When you end up leaving a narcissistic system or a relationship, most people will say, I didn't sign up to get a PhD in narcissism, right? And a lot of times you're checking. I have a lot of people checking, am I the narcissist? And so number one, if you're asking yourself if you're a narcissist, most likely you're not. Number two, if you're going to counseling, you're most likely not a narcissist. Narcissists will not go to counseling because they don't think they've done anything wrong. So the overcoming that is a lot of wiring. It's a lot of how do you draw boundaries? How do you get to know yourself? Because obviously there was something in you that you were giving too much of, or you were enabling certain behaviors. A lot of times you'll come into those relationships with love bombing, and the switch flips on a wedding night, or like it just all of a sudden they become a different person. And for me personally, leaving my marriage, I think the most terrifying part of it was I don't actually know who I was married to. Like who he presented isn't really a person that I know.
And you probably don't know the answer to this, but is like a study or stats that's shown that, if you're a certain Myers-Briggs letter or certain Enneagram or certain introvert, extrovert, some kind of characteristic that leads you to being a narcissistic person?
They say 100% of people who had childhood trauma, or 100% of narcissists had childhood trauma.
Okay.
But 100% of people who had childhood trauma don't turn out to be narcissists. And so there's something else in there that we're still trying to figure out, whether it was like a family member that was overindulgent or underindulging, and or is there is it biology? Did you have a parent that was narcissistic and that's the behavior you mirrored, or is it actually in your DNA?
Yeah, have they proved like genetics or anything like that?
I think they could say that happens, but again, like you're mirroring behavior.
Yeah.
So
is it a difference between counseling and coaching, or the counseling and coaching kind of like the same thing?
In my world, it's pretty similar. Most of the clients I see are coming out of religious trauma. They're pretty high functioning, and they're limited though with belief systems and how they're showing up. So counseling is primarily licensure boundaried. So I'm licensed in the state of Washington. So people seeking insurance and things like that, I can see them in the state of Washington, which is weird also. And they're trying to redo this because I can see a client in, say, Walla Walla, but I can't see a client in Idaho, even if it's like online.
So I know, like, if you're a lawyer, there's something called like reciprocity or something like that, where if you're a lawyer in Washington, you can do it in different states,
right,
but not all. Is a therapy the same way you might be able to teach?
They are just starting to work on that,
okay.
as a result of the pandemic. And so, people started moving. And so best practice is you keep your client for a little while until they can find a new clinician. And so there is a reciprocity thing that they're trying to enact.
Okay.
Yeah. And then for me, the coaching clients, I coach clients in two different ways. They'll either be in that kind of vein of religious trauma or out of state, or but they can't file insurance for that. Sometimes they get professional development paid for from their organization, and then I also coach execs. But that's like, I believe in corporations. We need the top down. So it's like the leaders need to be on board with how they're speaking and leading and training, whether it's just the Enneagram or authenticity or all those things.
How does the insurance work? Like, is it like this regular health insurance that the client has to like put in a claim to the insurance company and they approve it or disapprove it, and they come back to you and say, no, you need to pay it, or that it has to be a painful process?
Yeah, specifically for me, I'm an out-of-network provider, and so I offer my clients super bills, and so they can turn those into their insurance company like a reimbursement.
Mm-hmm.
Other people, there'll be a list of paneled therapists that they can see, and so you pick one of those people from the list that your insurance has already approved of.
So this is like a loaded question, right? Is there like not a client per se, but like, like, man, like I wish I could be the therapist for like the CEO of like a multi-billion-dollar company, or like, I want to be like the therapist for the senator from, blah, 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 right? Anything like that?
For me, I think I prefer to work with small companies because you can see change happen faster. It's, if you're working with these big corporations, it's really difficult to see this beast kind of move in a direction. But when you've created something with like a startup or something new, there's a lot more innovation and creative ways of thinking, and it tends to be that the CEOs care much more about I'm not saying that CEOs don't care about their people, but they're more dependent on them because it's smaller. Is
there an age where, a two-part question, is there an age where someone's too young for therapy, and is there an age when someone's too old for therapy?
I see adults only, but there's lots of really good therapists who see really young children, and they do play therapy with them. And then too old for therapy, no. I think when you're talking about change happening, we always can be changing. We can always rethink what we're believing and how we're acting. That's neuroplasticity. And so I think that's a really great thing about humans is we can always be changing.
So since you mentioned, talk about neuroplasticity, right? I just watched a YouTube video about it a couple of days ago. This PhD doctor talked about. I think most people, they think the older you get, the less your brain can move around or change. But actually, your brain can change any time as long as you like a muscle, right?
Right.
If you use it, it's going to change. Like, can you talk about the points, like, learning new things,
Yeah.
I mean, old dogs can learn new tricks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, you just said it all right there. Yeah. Like, neuroplasticity is a concept that just says that we used to think that our brains were like static, that they weren't ever going to change. And so if you had a certain behavior, you were going to behave like that all the time. And now we know different, that our brains can rewire themselves given the right tools and medications or whatever that is. So it's really great news.
So the coolest thing I've seen like the last couple of years, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was on YouTube, like messing around, and I came across this Python channel, right? People learn how to do Python. And there's a guy who's 70 years old, right?
Like a snake python or the
coding Python.
The coding, okay.
Coding Python, yeah, coding. I need to verify that. Yeah, it's coding Python, right? And this guy, he was 70 years old. He said, I started learning Python at 67, and now I'm like teaching this Python class, right? Man, that's so freaking cool, right? Like,
it
someone
is really
had the courage at 67 to learn like this.
And I think too, I think with development, children definitely have more spongy brains. Like you talk about learning foreign languages and all these things, and they definitely just soak in these things because they're spongy. But we also still can keep learning.
Yeah. Talk about the power of saying no, and why that's important for you, like to say no, maybe every once in a while.
We can never really say yes if we don't learn how to say no. Like our yes is never really a yes, and so we want to be able to live in that kind of dichotomy of being able to say, or even the complexity of yes, no, and maybe, or not yet. But it really enables us to get to know ourselves, right? What is a yes for me? What is a no for me? And I'm gonna stand in my autonomy to be able to say that, and my agency to say, I don't really like what's going on here, instead of going along with groupthink or the crowd, just because it feels more comfortable and safe.
So is there I don't think there's an answer to this, but is there a certain percentage you say, like, suppose someone asks you something, let's suppose I asked you to, like, hey, let's go have a coffee, and all 10 times you said no. So I take the hit, man, maybe she doesn't want to hang out with me, or like this. Like, how do you keep it from taking it personal, I guess?
I think you tell yourself don't take it personal. But I think, honestly, there's places where if you've continued to try to have a relationship with somebody or ask them to go get coffee and they continue to say no, or they continue to cancel on you at the last minute, then maybe that's
an indicator.
Yeah. And I would say, don't take it personally. Like, if you think you're a great person and you have a lot to offer, maybe it's just not a relationship you need to be in.
How about this one, right? Let's suppose like there's two people, right? One person asks this other person, hey, like, can you do some stuff for me? And they do, like, it's minor stuff, nothing big deal. They do like minor stuff 9-10 times, right? Nothing big deal, like nothing, it's minor stuff. And then the one guy asks the other person, hey, can you introduce me to someone? And they say no. And you're like, okay, I've done these 10 things for you. What are you going to tell me no for? Do you like, and then the next day they ask you something else, right? You say, okay, tit for tat, I did 10 things for you. I asked for a simple thing I know you can do. You said no. Then you want some more stuff. You're like, okay, this is like some BS. Like, you're being like.
I would be more curious about it. Like, maybe they're uncomfortable, right? Like, like in your mind, you're going, hey, I've helped you with all these things. You should
just do this easy thing for me.
Do this easy thing. So what is behind that? What is going on for them behind that? And then, like, I really like people who speak directly, right? And because it helps me. I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And then being able to say, being curious instead of accusatory, like, hey, dude, you didn't like, I just asked something silly and you're like being rude about it, instead of going, what's behind that for you? And helping them to recognize maybe, oh, you have done all those things, because maybe they don't see that, but you're keeping track.
Yeah, which maybe some people say you shouldn't keep track, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of times relationships are reciprocal, and that's the best kind of relationship to have.
Yeah.
I mean, it becomes, more codependent or enmeshed when it's not reciprocal.
Yeah, I agree. What's your take on imposter syndrome? Why do so many people struggle with that?
With what syndrome?
Imposter syndrome.
Oh, imposter syndrome. I think we all do. Like, and I think that's the place of learning who you are, but also being able to read the room with accuracy and going, what do I have to offer here? But really, I think for women specifically, we think less highly of ourselves, and so there's some statistic about women applying for jobs, and they feel like if I don't have all the categories covered, then I can't apply. But men will be like, I have most of it. I'll go ahead and apply.
And I think, talk about HR stuff. I think that's why there's such a pay gap, right? Because like the stats show, like you just said, the job description says A, B, C.
Yeah.
A female say, man, I only have A, I can't apply.
Yeah, right.
A guy says, well, I have D.
I have D, it's not even
close,
on there.
It's close to it, Let me apply. So that's one thing. And also, I think another big thing too is like, I think 90% of the time it'll say like, I'm kind of making this up, but I'm not. Let's suppose like me and you get a job doing marketing, right? We both get offers $50,000 a year. Stats show 95% of the time the female's gonna say, "Oh, thank you very much. I need the job," right?
Right.
Stats show I'm gonna say 9% of the time, "Hey, guy, I'm working like 65,000, right?"
Yeah.
And I may get him, may not. Let's suppose I get it. We both do a great job. 10% raise to 65 is way more than 50,000, right?
Right.
It gets better. And then what makes it worse is like, we're both in the job for 6 months. I go to the boss and say, hey, boss, I've been on the job for 6 months. Where's my raise?
Right.
I might get it, right? Well, you might have closed a $5.2 billion deal, like something incredible.
Yeah.
And everyone say, go ask for a raise.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my job.
Yeah. It's so interesting because that's so true across the board. And I think that the way that women specifically in that place need to work is they need to play the game, and they need to learn how to play the game, because it's not going to go away. So
I know a lot of people would say, well, they just have to play the game should be fixed, right? But the game's not going to be fixed anytime soon.
Yeah, so learn how to play it. And there's a really good book out there called Likeable Badass by Allison Forgale, and highly recommend that for women, because it's all about status. How do you get status? And status is by being likable but not soft, and also being a badass.
Yeah, unfortunately, females think y'all definitely have to do the fine line. Like you gotta be the bad boss bitch, and then still like the minimum thing, like all the stereotypes. Oh, she's a bitch. She's that nagging person, right? Yeah. She's this,
Yeah, but we need women in the workforce, and we need women leading, and we need them to learn how to play the game so they can be there, because we know organizations and systems work better when there's diversity.
Yeah,
it's more creative, and
all the stats show it works, right?
Yeah.
Here's one for you. Like, suppose like you're the only only woman, only man, only whatever. You're only whatever in the room. What's your advice to that person who's only whatever in the room?
take a big deep breath and be authentic to you. But also there's a play, like there's hypervigilance, which is being aware of what your surroundings is and being able to read the room. I think that's a huge piece, but also stepping into it with bravery of letting your voice be heard. So breathe and read it, right? Read the room.
Yes. So what, can you talk about some of your personal career goals moving forward?
Sure. This year I was thinking I would do a TED Talk, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen with everything else going on. I have a counseling practice that I've had for 9 years, and moving that into more corporate work, working with teams, using all of this for a speaking platform is a huge deal for me. And I really get a lot of energy from workshops and working with teams. So that would be a huge, huge win.
So when you do your therapy session, is it draining for you, or you get energy from it? Or is this case by case basis?
It takes a lot of energy. Yeah. I have a limit that I'll see 5 clients in a day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. Man, I could probably handle half a day. That's a lot, 5 a day?
Yeah.
It's like hour sessions?
Yeah, hour sessions.
That's a lot. I would think it's a lot. And I'm thinking too, like, I'm pretty sure you like do some prep time before, prep time after. So on 1 hour session is probably more like 3 hours of the day, right?
Yeah, but you kind of learn your groove there.
Okay.
So you have, it's 50 minutes and you have a 10-minute thing, and it's kind of a joke with therapists, like, are you going to go get a bite to eat, or are you going to run to the bathroom or take a sip of water or do your paperwork, right? So you're just, a lot of people see like 30 clients a week, which
I don't know how you do that.
I don't know how you do that either.
Yeah. So 5 a day. So are you doing 25 a week?
I'm not doing 25 a week. I'll see clients 4 times a week. So
4 times a week.
20
Okay.
is my max. Yeah.
That's your max. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you just determined by doing this for 9 years or, okay.
Mm-hmm. Like how much can I actually handle? And again, being kinder to myself, like what is a good number for me that at the end of the day, I still have energy to go play and be with people.
And I'm guessing you only do this Monday to Friday. Like there's no weekend work,
No weekend.
9 to 5. So is there like an emergency clause where like a client like can call you on the weekend? Like, okay, I'm like in a bad place. I need to talk to someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what kind of, you always talk about the some, but go into more detail. What can a client expect from you as with you being a therapist?
Yeah. A really good bond, empathetic ear. I do a lot of the narrative focused trauma therapy. So a lot of trauma therapy, a lot of anxiety. Most of my clients are really high functioning. So they're working, they have jobs. They're not, I think that if I'm going to be on teletherapy, my clients need to be more high functioning, just for their best care. Otherwise they need to go to behavioral health center or something that would care for them better. We set goals, which is hard at the same time because I'm trying to work myself out of a job, right? I want them to graduate. They always can come back if they get a bump in the road. And I do see a lot of clients, over the years that have come back for a couple sessions, 1 session. I need some help processing this. But I think a lot of times my biggest thing is helping them recreate those narratives like that are limiting. So I have these beliefs and I'm stuck and this is who I think I am. And then being able to work out of that and go, actually, there's a big future for you here.
And I'm guessing you've had like male clients, female clients. Another loaded question. Have you found like men or women are more accepting of therapy, or does it doesn't matter? They're all accepting.
I don't think it matters. I find the male clients more driven to get through the therapy.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you give them homework, they do their homework.
Okay. So you talked about HIPAA before. What happens, like, suppose you have a client, been like, we'll say 4 or 5 sessions, and then quote unquote the police come and say, hey, we need to give you we need information on your client, right? Is that like client confidentiality? You can't give it to them, or depends on what they want it for. You have to give it to them.
Yeah, and I mean not just the police, but they can sign a release of information. I mean the police is a whole different ball game around safety for the greater good and all of that. But like the clients can sign a release of information, and it allows me to do more collaborative care. So I might talk to their PCP or their psychiatrist or a naturopath, so we can actually look and see what is really going on in a bigger picture with this client and give them the best care.
Let's suppose you have a client, right? And you just tell, okay, this person's not focused today, right? You like, okay, you're 10 minutes in, hey, Jason, obviously you're not focused today. Or you're like, let's focus on this therapy session. You're like, okay, you're not focused today, let's do it another day.
Well, you're responsible to pay regardless of
Okay.
what
Well,
happens in the
that's a
session.
good thing to know.
So, I think most people will come pretty focused.
Okay.
And, um,
I'm guessing you're not like $1.99 an hour.
there was a really funny Bob Newhart skit a while ago, and have you seen this one?
I think I probably have, yeah.
And a woman comes in and she's claustrophobic, and he said, my billing is that you just pay by the minute, and usually people don't see me more than 5 minutes.
Mm.
So she gets out a little piece of paper and he's like, I'm gonna tell you 2 words, and she's ready to write it down, and he said, stop it. And she's like, I don't like that. And and he's like, well, stop that. Stop that. And so anyway, it's a funny little skit, but for price wise and all of that, it's an important investment in somebody's life. And so when they finally have the courage to say, I need some help, they'll show up.
What does it mean to you to be courageous?
I think it means stepping into who you are and being okay with that, and also being able to speak on behalf of others that might not have the ability to speak for themselves. It's like when your heart is beating and you're going, oh, this is one of those moments where I need to either speak up for myself or someone else.
Let's go back to your book, Cracked Open, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you're gonna do like the individual, like indie tours, bookstores, whatever. Does it matter what kind of bookstore it is? Like, is a bookstore? Like, are you going like the Barnes and Nobles, or like more like intimate, more like private?
Yeah. So my
bookstores?
book is available on Amazon, and then it's at Barnes and Noble online. And this is the things you learn when you're in this space of, like, you can apply for Barnes and Noble to carry it, and it goes to somebody who makes a decision if they're going to carry it at the local store where you are. But mostly indie bookstores. A lot of times it's like an event that is an invite event, or is maybe at a winery or something where it's just intimate, and people invite their friends, that kind of thing.
So the book, was it like mentally draining? I have to imagine it's mentally draining for you at times, right?
Yeah, it was really mentally draining. Yeah. And, again, it was a process as I wasn't familiar with. And like, I think the hardest part was the revisions. So you sign a document saying that you're going to read it 10 times out loud.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out on that one. I'm out on that one.
So
I'm like, hey, I'd copy and paste the ChatGPT.
I know.
Read this for me 10 times.
10 times, read it out loud. And actually there is some app or something on, I don't know if it's on Google or Word or something, that it can read it out loud for you. So you can hear if there's mistakes or if it sounds good.
So how would this work? Like, suppose you send a draft to your editor, and just say your editor like destroyed it, right? Like, you're like, man, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I'm getting destroyed here.
Yeah.
Editor, like, take it down a notch, this is my first book.
Yeah. I mean, my editors were really good. I mean, my first one was in France, and I don't think the book would exist without him. So I was really, really, really fearful leaving this system I had been a part of, for so many reasons. They were my community, and I was left with nothing, and they didn't believe me, and I needed help, and my ex-husband was scary. And so, and I would they had discredited me, and so I moved, I needed to make money, and I thought, I can't let these people know what I'm doing, because I'm not gonna make money, and I'm not gonna be able to provide for myself or my kids. And also, when you're in these church communities as a person on staff with them, your monies that you get are from people tithing. And so you're just always, always, always hyper vigilant to anybody being around you. So I might be at Starbucks or the local coffee shop, because we don't like Starbucks, buying a coffee, and anybody could come in from my church and judge me spending the tithe money on a coffee. Or I could be at Target and buying toilet paper, and somebody could look in my cart and judge me because they paid, or they gave a tithe to the church that's being used for my salary, for my husband's salary. And so there was this hyper vigilance always of what was going on. And so when I started writing this story, I was just writing that situation where I'm sitting with these male leaders in the church, and it was very vanilla. It was very plain. There wasn't much in it. And my editor said, can you tell me what's actually going on in this space? I have no idea what is going on, because you're not giving any details. And I was really, really afraid. And he said, I won't tell anybody. I just need to know what direction we're going with the book. And so I said, are you familiar with religious systems? And he's in France. And he said, yes. And I said, are you familiar with the evangelical church? And he said, yes. And then I was like, and what side do you sit on with that? And he said, I'm no longer a part of that. And so it really became this really amazing relationship where he would send me books of like, hey, you might want to read this book because it might help with your research, or this one I read, or I got an article for you that might help formulate some of your thoughts about where you want to go with it. So he was really beneficial. And then when he cut 3,000 words, at that point I was like, okay, I know he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So how do you pick it? Do you have? I guess you have illustrations in the book. How do you pick the illustrators for the book?
Just the cover.
Just the cover, okay.
Yeah, and they also provided that, the book company I wrote with.
Okay.
Manuscripts, yeah. So they were in Macedonia, actually.
Oh wow.
So yeah, my marketing guys in South Africa and
all over the place.
All over the place.
Is there a place like you want to do a book tour, like suppose you haven't visited like Savannah, Georgia, or like is there some random place you want to go to just to visit, but you're gonna use like book as an excuse to go visit?
Yeah, that's a great question because like I have tried to like think through where I'm gonna travel like maybe every month, and then go ahead and try to get connected with some of the local bookstores there, or people that I have on the ground that can help me with the events. And I was in Chicago, like I said, and so would love to get some stuff set up there. I'd really like to go back to New England where the story took place, and I don't think I'm going with the middle finger up, but maybe, right?
At least sideways.
Yeah, maybe sideways.
Maybe sideways. So how do you do your schedule every day? Like, you have a calendar you follow, a set schedule, or you just wing it?
Well, with my therapy clients, that kind of predicts what that's going to look like, and I've had to be more careful about scheduling chunks of time so I can have creative time. Because I took 2 months off of writing, and then I finally got back into my book. I read it for the first time on my flight to Chicago without having to read it for revisions, and so I like writing blogs. I'm not a big social media post writer, but I like blogs. I like creating content. I like creating curriculum, and so making sure I have time during the week where I can really sit down and wrap my mind around that.
So you say you haven't. So here's one for you. Like, suppose you read a book now, right? You read the book, you're like, you find yourself editing that book, right?
I do.
Okay.
I do, and then but I actually tell myself while I'm reading it, just enjoy it, or I'll be critical of my book based on somebody else's book, and really coming to the place of going, we all have our own uniqueness. Right? Having to tell myself that, because there's a handful of women that are talking about the same thing right now and writing about the same thing, and all from different perspectives or their own stories, but also using the platform for different things, whether they're more politically driven or, helping women that are being abused in domestic violence or whatever it is so everybody is needed, right? I think I write about that in my book. The word capacious is a book of just like overcapacity. Like, there's room for everybody.
Has this happened yet where someone reached out to you and said, hey, your book changed my life, or your book did something for me? Has that happened yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But had to be a pretty good moment, I would think.
It is a good moment. I've had several people reach out that are from my past and have said, your book resonates with me. I'm either in that situation right now and I'm trying to get out, or I got out, and it's just nice to know somebody else understands what that feels like. So.
Yes. So anything else you want to cover in the book?
No, that's great. Yeah.
And you're doing all the marketing yourself right now?
Doing all the marketing myself.
So the book company doesn't really help you with that? It's all on you pretty much?
There's a marketing professional that helps you figure out how to market.
So like he consults you?
He consults
like
me.
You should do this.
Yes.
But you do it on your own.
You do it on your own. Yeah.
Okay. What's some marketing things you haven't done yet that you're thinking about doing?
I haven't done any like literary festivals, or what is it called when you reach out to the newspaper kind of.
I know you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. I mean, the lists can go on. It's like reaching out to podcasts and, oh gosh, creating lead magnets and
all that stuff.
My
right?
Amazon page still needs like the A+ little section where it's got graphics and
all that stuff. Yeah,
all that stuff.
So is it safe to say that you're pretty proud of yourself for writing this book?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing, I hope it helps people understand. 8-10 years ago when I was in that situation, there wasn't a lot of resources, and now more people are talking, and women are finding help, and men finding help to get out of situations that are trauma filled and want to keep you oppressed and small. And I feel like, given the state of our world right now, it's really an important book.
So how has your relationship with your kids changed, or has it stayed the same? Has it gotten better or worse ever since the book came out? Well, they're like, man, Mom, we didn't know you went through all this bullshit here. We didn't know, or
some
like,
of it, some of it, yeah. I don't think they all haven't read it yet, and I'm just letting that be their journey and on their own time.
Yeah.
They all have their own stories about how this got put together, and I think when we can collaborate and put stories together, we get a much more beautiful and full picture of what was actually going on. So there's stories in there that they don't know, which will be interesting. I think the more traumatic, for lack of a better word, issues came when we left the system, and me really having to shift a lot of my belief systems, which I had taught to my kids. And so everybody was a little upended around, we don't really know where we land and what we believe. And
isn't it part of the book where you're like, okay, where you had like give your kids like not a warning, but like, hey kids, like this isn't a book. It's like kind of bad. I just want to tell you ahead of time.
No.
Are you letting them find on their own?
I didn't. I mean, they know. Okay. They know that there's stuff in there that's not happy, and it's hard.
It's not unicorns and rainbows, right?
Yeah. There's and so I don't know that they would be extremely surprised to read something like that. But yeah, I think it was really like we had built our world around this belief system, and when we changed, or I decided to change as a parent to everybody, and I was fumbling and wobbly and going, I'm not sure what I believe anymore. They all entered that same space,
So what's your advice to someone that might be in that same situation? Like, how do you advise them, like, control your situation, get out of there, like those kind of things?
Yeah, there's a lot of strategy, and that's what I would call it. I would say I'm not giving the truth about my situation, but there's a time that I need to give the truth that is more safe. But if you are in a situation like that, first of all, I would ask if you're safe. Most people are not, but most people will deny the fact that they think somebody would hurt them because they've been with them forever and they would never do that. But it's just simmering most times with narcissists. And so, making sure that you have a go bag, like something is packed, ready to go if you need, and having a place to go. So having a friend's house that nobody else knows that you're going there. When I was collecting stuff around my house to put in my safety spot, you're thinking, what do I actually need here? Like grandma's teacups, and so it's really unsettling. But being able to have that, being able to, for people in these oppressive systems, oftentimes you don't have, you're financially abused too, and so being able to have, if people can give gift cards, being able to have some sort of means to provide for yourself, opening your own bank account if you can.
Yeah, I would say in the year 2025, if you're a female married, you don't have your own banking account. That's probably financial oppressive, right?
Right. Yeah, and being able to understand finances and all those things. Finding a support group. There's a good handful of places you can go. There's what is her name? Natalie Hoffman has I would say it's a support group or kind of a way to walk through situations. She has a podcast, and if you can't sign up for her subscription, then have a friend do it for you, because if somebody's watching your finances, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the thing. And I had somebody paying for counseling for me so that it wasn't coming up in my bank records.
Is there a stat out there that shows like what percent of people go back to the abusive relationship?
I'm sure there is, but I'm sure it's probably higher than
They would hope to be, right?
Yeah, than we're hoping. And again, part of our brain is wired that we go back to familiar.
You're comfortable, like at least I was safe, or whatever, or
yeah, this is all I know. What am I going to do on my own? How am I going to make this happen? And so I think it's very helpful right now to be able to say, get a safety plan, get a bank account, find support. There's a woman I know, she went to an Episcopal church because that's kind of a neutral ground. Nobody can touch you there. And but it's incredibly scary and life-changing. You may end up in a women's shelter. You may, while your ex has plenty of money to provide, but he's not giving you any. But that's not the end. I think that's the big message, is that's not the end. You can still create a really good second half of your life.
I'm guessing like each city or location or state has different rules on all this. I'm guessing, like like if you're in like if you're in Denver, Colorado, if your spouse does something to you, it might be a misdemeanor. But like in like Memphis, Tennessee, it's like it's between the wife and husband. Like
yeah, I'm assuming, I'm not sure, but that's a good thing to bring up to know. There's lawyers that can work for you and help develop a strategy. One of the strategies is, if you're going to confront your ex, don't be in the same room with them, or say that, tell them you want to leave, but have them on speakerphone and have a witness there to hear what they say. Because a lot of times they'll be threatening, and then you can get a restraining order. So there's a lot of that in there. It's not easy, but it's necessary, and it's good to get out.
Has it been a time, or this is like kind of personal, when you're like talking to one of your clients, you're like, man, this is my story right here. This is like, this could be my twin right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you deal with that?
I check with myself. Yeah, I check with myself and make sure that I'm grounded and not being thrown back in my own story, and reminding myself I'm there for them. Sometimes, depending on the client, I might tell them, if they know some of my story, that I'm feeling a little bit of countertransference or transference here, just to let them know that that's going on. But then a lot of times it's for their situations when they're in the beginning and they need to get out. Like, the getting out is the harder part physically, and then the next part is the rewiring, that's hard.
Has that happened? We're doing therapy with something, and you click your mind like, I have to help this person get out now. Like, this person's in danger. I need to help this person myself.
I haven't had anybody exactly like that.
Are you able to do that? I guess that's against the rules.
No, if their life is in danger, yeah. And a lot of times they won't think, like I said earlier, they won't think that it is. I mean, I can look back in my story and go, oh yeah, that was not a good situation that I was in, and it was. I never left my children alone with my husband. If I went out of town, I'd have them stay with friends. Intuitively, I knew that wasn't a safe thing.
And so you became a therapist because of your story, or you were already a therapist?
So in the organization I was a part of, as a pastor's wife, you give free labor to the church, and it's not something you put on your resume. So I have a big hole in my resume.
Sounds like a military spouse. Same thing, same exact thing.
Yeah. And and so one of the things that you could do in this space was do kind of a caregiving job. So nurses, teachers, and therapists was something that was permissible for women. And because this organization likes to keep everything in the bubble and in-house, it was a good idea for me to go get a therapy degree, because I could be clinically trained and biblically informed, is what we called it. And so they would send clients within the church to me, and I could help them stay in the church.
Nice. Is there anything I should ask you I haven't asked you yet, or anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's good. That was thorough.
Cool. Can you give us your social media so people reach out to you? Like, give your social media, ways to buy your book, all that.
Yeah.
All the do your marketing now.
All my marketing. Yeah. You will find me on Instagram and LinkedIn, and it's under Michelle Moffitt Coach. Facebook as well. You can buy my book on Amazon, Cracked Open, Michelle Moffitt, Barnes & Noble, lots of indie bookstores. If you go on your local indie bookstore, it's probably online for you there. And I'm trying to think what else. Is there any more things I've missed?
Yeah, the newsletter? Talk about
I have a newsletter. Yeah, you go onto my website. You can either hit me on michellemoffitt.com, or that's 2 F's and 2 T's. I have a friend, and her last name is Prophet, and she said, double the fun, double the trouble, right? And or you can find me on 5 Oaks Counseling and Coaching.
Okay.
And sign up for my newsletter there.
Nice.
Yeah.
And can you give us any last minute advice or wisdom or anything you want to talk about?
I think that huge neuroplasticity piece is awesome, and just being able to understand you can change your mind, that it's possible, and you can get out of these limiting belief systems that are like constraining you from living a bigger life.
Michelle, thanks for your time and for sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for your time as well. Remember to be great every day.